Welcome everyone to Nintendo Super Podcast. Today's big topic is how good is Super Mario Odyssey? And as usual, we are joined by Brandon from What About Nintendo. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Hey guys, hey everybody in the chat. How you guys doing tonight? Super excited to talk about all the topics we have for today.
Yeah, which is a decent amount actually, you know.
Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily prepared for this many stuff that needs to be said. Blah, my brain. But so we're eventually going to get to Super Mario Odyssey and talk a lot about that. But I think there's a few things we should get to before that point. So I'm actually pulling up the outline I have on Twitter. Of course. Jesus. All right. Nope, that's the outline from last week. What? The Twitter on my phone hasn't updated? Are you serious? Okay, that's weird. Anyways, so I guess we can just talk about. Like, I had the outline was on Twitter. Okay, it literally just updated now. Wow. All right, here we go. So there's a lot of different things to talk about. Well, let's talk about one that I just actually learned about today, which is weird, and that is the fact that apparently there's a giant fan project going on where there's a lot of people working on creating a new piece of hardware that is somewhere between PS4 Pro and Xbox One X in terms of power, and it's kind of like almost like a Steambox sort of, but there's a petition out there. They already have over 33,000 actual votes in. They're trying to get to 35,000, and then they're going to bring it to Sega and try to get Sega to partner with them. The system is being called Spartan. Basically, it's this huge fan push, this giant campaign to get Sega back into the console business. I think that is a very, very glamorous idea.
Yeah.
What are your initial thoughts on this, Brandon? If you have any other, details to bring up about, what's actually going on in this thing, you may have a better idea of what's going on than I do. So
yeah, I watched some videos on it. It's interesting. It seems like something that's been going on for a little while, and it's just now getting to where they might actually want to send it into Sony. But it's weird because, or Sega, I mean, not Sony. But it's weird because, like, it's strange. Do they think that Sega's actually just going to be like, yep, sure, we'll totally make a new console right now? I don't know why they would do that. I don't know. It's interesting. Apparently, they wanted to open source it, which just means that they don't have like their own actual built-in OS, like Sega-owned OS, and the platform can be hacked really easily, and like you can download Steam on it and all kinds of stuff. So, which is like just a bad idea for companies in general, because what that does is, because usually when you put up a store and somebody puts their games up on your store, you get part of the profit from every single game that gets sold. But if you have an open-ended program, you can just download Steam, and then Sega's not getting any money from any of the games being sold on this console except their own first-party games if they decide for first-party games on there. So they're getting money for the box, but generally when you make a console, you break even or even sell sometimes at a loss, unless you're Nintendo and you're just geniuses apparently. You sell at a loss for the system, and then you make it back up with games. But you can't do that with an open source program. It just doesn't. They could just download anything else and use that instead. And you wouldn't have your own store that would earn you money. So it's interesting. But other than that, I don't see why. I think it could be interesting for Sega to make a new console, even though technically they wouldn't be making it. These other people who already have like this, they have renders and stuff of what it's supposed to look like. Already.
I mean, I just
weird.
I don't see it.
I don't know the idea. It's weird.
I don't really see it happening. I'm just gonna be frank.
No, I don't see it either.
It's interesting to me, but I don't see this happening at all for a few different reasons. Like you were talking about it being open source, that just basically, whenever I hear open source, that tells me, okay, this is not going to succeed. Like, it's not,
pretty much.
It doesn't necessarily mean that, but there's a heavy correlation with it, and it's because you can't. That's not really a good idea for profitability, right? Because if it's open source, people are just going to put a whole bunch of stuff on there and not make money. In fact, that's one of the reasons why the PlayStation Vita didn't do really well. because people can kind of just hack and put whatever games out there they want on there. Like, there were people playing Nintendo games on the PSP, and like, so Sony didn't make that much games. They didn't get that much money for the games because people were just getting a PSP Vita and just playing whatever they wanted on that, and that was it. So, and that's not even like truly open source, right? So imagine say it's open source, you literally put whatever you want on there, and you know, that just means people won't, you know, they won't spend money on real games. It just won't happen. Like, think about this. Like, how many games do most people buy on smartphones? They really usually don't, right? You'll get all the free stuff.
I've bought one in my entire life. One.
Yeah, I got me too. And that Mario Run, exactly. Right, because of Nintendo. But otherwise, you wouldn't. What you would do is that you get really into a free-to-play game, and after a certain point, you're so deep into it, you just feel invested, you have to maybe make a small microtransaction for some sort of power-up or something like that. That's how free-to-play games work. But if you basically allow an open source system, you there's free games everywhere, basically, so no one's going to buy the actual game, so it's just not a good business proposition as it stands, right? However, if Sega sees this, and maybe this is enough support for them to jump on it, but they'll be like, okay, we will get on board, but under certain conditions. We need to change around the graphics card. It cannot be open source. You know, we need to have our own market. Like, if they do stuff like that, then maybe it would work out as a system. But here's a few other things to consider here. Sega left the console market for a lot of reasons. One, they didn't have the financial backing at the time, but they also realized that when they divvied up all their resources and assets between marketing and creating different types of hardware and innovating and then creating a whole bunch of software, it was too much for them to handle at where they were at during the Dreamcast era. They weren't large enough of a company to handle all that at the time, so they scaled things down. They just focused on making games, and they've become a very profitable company since. Going back into this, they probably won't do that just because some people are like, hey, look, we created a system based off the NVIDIA stuff. Put your games on here. It's highly unlikely. I'm not saying it's not going to happen no matter what, but it's probably not going to happen no matter what. Like,
who would buy this? Why would you buy this?
You have to consider something else here. Sega, they were in the console. They were in the console business during a time when they liked creating their own hardware. They're not even creating their own hardware here. I don't see it. No. And on top of that, why wouldn't Sega do that? Like, maybe Sega will be like, hey, we'll put our games on the system. Okay, but Sega is going to want to put their games on the Switch. They're going to want to put their games on the PS4. They're not going to want to just put all their games into one basket like that. It's just not going to. You don't do that. Yeah. I don't see it happening. I just don't.
Apparently, it's supposed to get a lot of. They're trying to get pretty much all the big AAA third-party games on the system as well. That's the goal. But I just don't see who this is marketed to. I guess hardcore Sega fans who are like, yes, finally a console that says Sega on it or something. I don't know. Maybe those people will buy it. But it's supposed to be in between PS4 Pro and X, so it's got to be like $400 to $500.
Right.
At that point, why wouldn't you just buy Sony or Microsoft's console? Why would you buy Sega's console, which they haven't made a console in years? They don't have all these deals with third parties and stuff. I don't know. It's also kind of fan made, so who knows what kind of changes are going to have to be made in order to get it to actually be good.
The only way I see
who would buy this?
Getting back into the console business is if they were to make a partnership with Microsoft. That's like the only way. And actually, that almost happened.
They would have to make their own online infrastructure.
That almost happened in the beginning of the 21st century when the Dreamcast was sort of trying to get a foothold in the marketplace, and Xbox wasn't out yet. Sega and Microsoft were in talks. They were planning on actually creating a merger and creating a whole new system. So imagine a scenario where Sega, an Xbox that actually had a whole bunch of Sega games, so actually first-party content, right, along with Xbox Live and Halo and Forza. That would be a real force to reckon with. But it didn't happen. They had some disputes as to how things would work, so it never came to fruition, which was probably a mistake. But I mean, now in this day and age, that's just probably not in the cards. But if it were to happen, I guess it maybe, you know, Microsoft is not doing so well right now. Maybe if Microsoft said to Sega, look, maybe we can help your games be better if we offered our funding, so you're gonna have higher budgets for your games. But most of your games have to be exclusive to PC and Xbox. And then all of a sudden, Xbox has a lot of first-party games. Of course, they'd be Sega games. So maybe that could happen, but that's also not likely either. But that's literally the only realistic way I see Sega getting back into the console business. But who knows? Maybe this thing will pan out. It won't. But maybe it will.
I don't think so.
No, and probably the same reason why the Atari box is not going to pan out either. It doesn't have a huge budget behind it. They want it to be crowdfunded. It's open source, which means you're not going to make money. Not really.
And it's $300 for essentially just an indie box.
Yeah,
it's just an indie box.
Yeah.
They're not even trying to get
boxes,
the big AAA.
right? So
yeah. They're not even trying to do it. At least these people are trying to like get big AAA third parties on board or something. Atari Box is not even trying. So.
No, but at least maybe they have a better idea of what they are, though.
Yeah, both are open source though, which is just not good for companies. Good for consumers, bad for companies.
Right. So I just don't see it happening. I think you agree with me. If it happens, cool. I'll be paying attention to it. But Sega's probably going to stay where they're at, making games for everyone. So next. Item on the shopping list is Switch stock looking good. That was almost an okay transition, but not. All right, so the Switch stock actually apparently is getting better. Apparently, Digitimes is reporting that about 2 million Switches will be coming monthly from now on, and that is what they're saying. Really good. I mean, that would basically mean the Switch is going to sell about 10 million by the end of the year, right? Around there.
I think they're forecasting 13
million. Switch sells 13 million in its first year. That would literally be the Wii U in its entire lifespan, which would be 4.5 years.
Yep.
So there you go. The Switch is about on pace to eclipse the Wii U in 1 year. And its lineup is also probably better than the entire Wii U lineup for a lot of people.
I think they're forecasting 13 million by the end of this calendar year and 20 million by the end of its actual full-length year. So March to March. So about 20 million for that. So insane numbers compared to the Wii U at the very least.
It's great. It's great. I mean, we're already seeing third-party support coming in. There are games being announced every few days, and of course we have things like Doom coming out, with Skyrim, Wolfenstein, L.A. Noire. So the games are coming, and I'm really curious to see what sort of games we're going to be seeing in the second year for the console's life, because obviously this is first-generation Nintendo games. I want to see them take even better advantage of the Switch's hardware. It's going to be very interesting because this first year is arguably the best console lineup for any console. Any first-year console lineup, this is probably. I don't think there's any arguing this is the best.
I don't think there's ever been a better one.
If you just talk about it strictly in terms of the amount of high-rated games, right? If you look at if we were to look at every console that has games on Metacritic, right? And you look at the first-year releases. The Switch's first-year releases would overall it would just outweigh any other console's first-year releases that are highly rated on Metacritic. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I mean, Mario Kart and Zelda are already two games that are both above 95% in terms of ratings. Mario Odyssey, we'll talk about later on the show, right? But that's the main topic of the show. Mario Odyssey has already gotten a 10 from Edge, and it may basically be one of those kind of games that's super high in terms of overall ratings. And every game's selling really well. Even third-party games are selling really well. I heard, what was it, what was that game? I think it was not Street Fighter. I think there was a fighting game that came out that sold comparatively well on the Switch compared to the PlayStation. I don't know. I can't think of it right now. But basically, we're hearing that the Switch, a lot of games that have come out on Switch and PlayStation,
I know the Pokken port did really well.
Yeah,
it did better than MVC Infinite.
It did. It did a lot better. It is selling. Oh, I remember what the game was. It was FIFA, which is not a fighting game at all.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was so confused. I was like, there's only like 2
No,
fighting
yeah,
games,
I know.
right?
No, it was FIFA I was confusing with for whatever reason. But FIFA is selling pretty well on the Switch apparently. Like, if you consider how many Switches are out there compared to how many PS4s are out there, and how many people are buying FIFA on the Switch, it's doing comparatively well. And that's on a system that, well, the version of the game is apparently a little gimped, you know, it doesn't have the whole online infrastructure set up yet, and there's tons of Nintendo games which are really highly rated, which historically people have said, oh, Nintendo games sort of take away sales from third parties because they're so good or whatever, right? So...
yeah, proper excuse for not putting third-party games on the console.
The fact that a lot of third-party games are showing promise already, there are third-party games being announced, tons of indie games announced. Like I said before, there's so many highly rated games on Metacritic and such on the Switch in its first year. Like, it's probably better than any other system in history. Things are looking very, very, very promising for the Nintendo Switch. I mean, what else do you have to add to that, Brandon? Do you?
I don't know. Second years for consoles is apparently one of like the best times. It's when it gets pretty much the best games and the best sales, typically the second year. We've already had such an amazing first year. I'm like, how in the world would they possibly top this year, next year? I'm like, third-party support. It's been good this year, don't get me wrong. It's not been bad, but it's not as good as it could be.
Right.
Next year, now that we're seeing all these third-party games, we're seeing Bethesda coming on and just giving so much support. Telltale Games, I think we may talk about that. I don't remember if that's an outlet or not. They're supporting
you can talk
the Switch
about it. I mean, if we can talk about it. There's a lot, but there's an interesting question that Tasumi Kimishima brought up that I would like to. Yeah, well, okay, Tasumi, we'll save that question towards the end. But it's a good question, so I'll keep it in mind. All right. Yeah. But continue with what you were saying, Brian. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh yeah, we are seeing more and more third parties get supporting the Switch, and I think we're going to see that just ramp up next year. I think now that the sales numbers of third party games are starting to come out, and we're going to have even more when Doom and Skyrim release in just next month. When those games release, those sales numbers are going to come out, and I think third parties are going to see that the Switch can push games. I think it can sell third-party games, and it can make them a good profit. So once they see that, and they see just how well, and once we see exactly how many Switches that were sold in its first year, I think that's going to surprise a lot of third-party companies that are looking on the Wii U and going, this is probably not going to sell that well.
It's interesting that you say that, right? I think I'm going to use this as a segue into another topic, and that is that Doom was announced for November 10th. So it's an interesting date because we actually were anticipating December, right? Because we found out about the game only a few weeks ago, basically, right? But it's coming out before Skyrim, and people are sort of speculating why is it coming out earlier than we expected because it was announced so soon. I mean, not too long ago. But I guess the speculation is that they're trying to put it in a time slot that is away from like Xenoblade or Mario. Right? Like, they're trying to avoid the big first-party Nintendo games. So I guess that then begs the question, right? How will third parties start releasing their games in the future? Will they look for those windows where there aren't big Nintendo games coming out? I mean, I think that makes sense, right? But and it's probably something that's always been a thing. But now that it really looks like the Switch is gaining legitimate third-party support. I mean, we just heard that BlazBlue is coming out for PS4, PC, and Nintendo Switch, and not Xbox. So that's interesting, right? We're already seeing examples of third parties performing Switch over Xbox. So we're getting into a scenario where we're going to be seeing a lot of releases like this that are going to be in between the big Nintendo games, right? And we're probably going to have to get used to that for a lot of third parties. It may even come to a point where, let's say it's a big multi-plat, like simultaneous release. I wouldn't be surprised if in the future, let's just say hypothetically, like the next Assassin's Creed, right? Let's just hypothetically speaking, I wouldn't be surprised, right, if maybe they plan on releasing Assassin's Creed like on the same day as Metroid Prime 4, right? But then they're like, oh wait, this is lining up. Maybe we shouldn't release the Switch version on the same day. Or maybe they'll consider that and just not even launch any of the games on the same day and just release like a week or a week sooner or a week later. I can see that happening. That's my opinion on it. What do you think, Brendan?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. It depends on what the third party company's mindset is. Because not every Nintendo IP is as big as Mario. Obviously, Mario's their biggest one, so I don't think any game should try to compete with that. I don't care what game you have. I don't care how awesome you think it is. You just shouldn't compete with Mario. It's a bad idea.
If you understand the history of this industry, you don't. Right? It's just like basically the gaming industry exists today because of Mario. Like it just, you don't.
Yeah, it just is.
It's not smart if you try and maximize sales. It's that simple.
Yeah. But I think for other first-party Nintendo games that aren't as big, like Pikmin or Animal Crossing or something, I think that'd be perfectly fine releasing third-party games on the same day as those. I think it's the big hitters that they're going to try to avoid. Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Pokemon. Those are the ones they need to watch out for. Right. Because those will definitely suck sales away.
See, here's the thing that's interesting to me, though. So, Doom is coming out a week before Skyrim on Switch. And because of that, I'm not sure I'm going to be getting Skyrim on Switch. So there's another thing to consider there. I mean, Bethesda is releasing 2 games that they're publishing a week from each other. And literally, I am telling you that because they're coming out within a week of each other, I do not think I will be getting Skyrim, at least not immediately, because I'm going to get Doom. And then, I mean, that's just... You know, like, that's a $60 game, and then another $60 game that right after that. It just, I don't know. And then Xenoblade's going to come after that. And, of course, I'll still have Mario Odyssey. I probably won't have 100% of Mario Odyssey by the time Doom comes out. So, it's an interesting situation here that I guess a lot of Nintendo fans aren't used to. They aren't used to so many high-profile games coming out one after another, after another, after another. Right? But, I mean, that's just the way the market is, right? So there's going to be tons of people on the Switch, and I think that's the other interesting thing here is that the Switch is looking like a console that's going to be really mainstream. It looks like Nintendo is actually appealing to a much larger audience here. And when I say much larger audience, I'm not talking about the casuals, like the Wii audience. I'm talking about like the PS4, Xbox audience, right? Like we're hearing now that Nintendo is making an even stronger effort to get a lot of more mature games, creating a different sort of, I guess, image for themselves in terms of having mature games on the system. Like, of course, Nintendo's always had mature games, but Brandon, like I'm sure you've already heard, right? I mean, you brought it to me earlier that mature games are coming onto the system, and from what we're hearing, Nintendo's trying to get even more mature games onto the system. Something like Grand Theft Auto, or like LA Noire, or like Doom, or Wolfenstein. It's talking about Nazis and stuff, you know. So it's not that Nintendo is trying to be like, oh, we're just going to have blood and sex everywhere. No, it's just they're creating a platform that is for everyone and getting all the games out there and appealing to every kind of gamer. And that's why one of the reasons why the Switch is doing really well, because it's that kind of system that appeals to a very large gamer audience. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting. Nintendo is usually thought of as the system that's only for children. I say that in quotations because I don't believe that in the slightest. Right. But it's kind of seen it like that. I mean, a lot of the systems, they don't get as many M-rated games. They just don't. Or if the M-rated games they're not... I don't know, there's a weird thing. So some games are rated M, and you just look at them and you're like, that's really maybe... You're kind of wondering why it was rated M, and those are kind of the ones that get put on Nintendo systems. They're like the ones you're like, those could probably pass for teen, but they're rated M anyways.
Well, Bayonetta 2 is kind of very sexualized.
That's true. Most of the time,
that's Nintendo exclusive.
That's true. But I feel like they're trying to get away from that, though.
I just think they're trying to appeal to a large audience. And they want to encourage every kind of gamer to be on the system.
I agree.
There is something, though, that's interesting, right? Because there has been this perspective, Nintendo is a kiddie system. It's just for kids. And that's not entirely wrong. Nintendo has always tried to create a family-friendly image, right? Now, family-friendly, to some, just reads as for kids. But family-friendly really means something that appeals to everyone, right? So, for example, when even parents can watch like a Pixar movie, like, because there are things in it that appeal to a more mature audience, but it's constructed in a way where everyone can enjoy it. So when you look at something like Super Mario Odyssey, right, that game is designed to appeal to all ages. That doesn't mean it's a kid's game, it's just appealing to everyone. And it's just kind of weird how, like, I mean, I've literally been told, like, oh, why aren't you playing Call of Duty? Like, that's way more manlier than Smash Brothers. Like, mind you, the person who was saying that was just, like, super ignorant and, like, doesn't play video games at all, doesn't get it, right? She was like, oh, my little brother plays way more mature games than you. It's like, yeah, that's it right there. Your little brother is not as mature, so he would prefer just to play games that have blood and guts because it makes him feel cooler and more mature, right? Well, me, I just play games that I think are fun. Right, exactly. And that's not to say Call of Duty isn't fun. It's awesome, right? It's just, you know, an example.
Call of Duty's fun. I like it.
You know, but it's just an example that a lot of kids play Call of Duty. It's very mainstream, but a lot of younger kids play Call of Duty because it makes them feel cool, you know, as opposed to, I don't know, Banjo and Bolts and Nuts or whatever, that terrible, terrible Banjo game on the 360.
So bad.
You know, yeah, it's just there is that stigma that is with Nintendo still, but they've been breaking that image. You know, if you look at the way they're putting out the advertisements, it's usually like people that are my age, like in their 20s, right? Like, so it's they're changing that around. When you have games like Doom, when you have games like Skyrim coming, when you have games like LA Noire, if Nintendo can get Grand Theft Auto on the system, then I think a lot of heads will really turn. I think that'll be like the final nail in the coffin that Nintendo is not for kids, right? It's for everyone, right? But that means even the hardcore gamer that only cares about blood and guts, right? So, like, will it happen? Maybe. We'll have to see how LA Noire does. And that's the thing that's interesting that I was trying to get sort of addressed earlier, right? So we have games that are coming out, like Doom that's coming out November 10th. We have Skyrim's coming out November 17th. And then LA Noire's not too far off either, right? We're getting some good third-party games right now. And I'm paying attention to the dates and how they're sort of marketing and strategizing the releases of these games, because how they perform could have huge implications for future third-party support in the future. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out and buy these games so we can get more third-party games in the future. I think the market, it decides for itself, right? If it's up to Nintendo and third parties to create an environment where things sell really well. It's not on you. However, if you like a game, I think you should go buy it, right? I mean, it's that simple. So, I'm curious to see how these games will sell. If they sell badly, I don't think it's like, oh, now there will be no third-party support. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the Switch is selling so well, and we've already seen signs of games doing well on the Switch, that companies are going to try again. They're going to try again. I mean, Bethesda's putting on 3 games. Granted, Nintendo has kind of set up like a partnership with them that I think they're paying for some of it, you know. But they're putting on 3 games, and before, Bethesda wouldn't even put on 1, no matter what. So that says a lot. So I expect to see, I hope to see more, but we'll see what happens. I think there's definitely a market for it. There's a lot of talk about Doom. There's a lot of talk about Skyrim. I think people see those games and they really want to play them on the Switch. I think it's a really good fit. I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to buy this system, because keep in mind, it's not just hardcore Nintendo fans who only play Nintendo games that are buying Switch. It's tons of people, because they see the system that is like, it can play everything, you know, and that's great. So tons of people are buying it. That's what I think. Do you have any disagreements or anything to add to that, Brandon?
Yeah, I think there was, I don't know, I think some people are looking at this and saying, oh, Nintendo's reaching a brand new demographic, but I don't think that's entirely true. I think they're just adding games that the demographic that was already there also enjoys, because there's a lot of proof that a big demographic for Nintendo has always been people in their like college age kind of people, like kind of late teenage years, like early 20s. That's been a big audience for Nintendo like forever. They just always been there, but there's never been that big of support for games that are only for them, or M-rated games that are more pushed towards them. And now it's just that there's more reason for that group that was already kind of there to expand more, because it was already a pretty big audience. But I think it can get bigger and more people can see that, because I feel like that audience is kind of like the invisible audience of Nintendo, like the one people don't actually see. The one Nintendo never really markets to for some reason until now.
Yeah, until Switch.
And now they started marketing to that audience that was already there. They were just weren't kind of were like not acknowledging it. for some reason. I don't know why, but they always seemed like with the Wii U, they always put out ads with a bunch of children in it, even though the people who were buying the Wii U, most of them weren't children because their moms thought the moms looked at
just an expensive add-on, right?
It was expensive. It wasn't getting as good sales.
They thought it was still
their kids
a Wii.
weren't really talking about it, so why would the parents buy that for their
Right.
kids? No, it was the people who were older who were buying the Wii
It also
U.
didn't have any really good Nintendo games. So,
That's true. It was the dedicated
Kimishima
older
brought up an interesting point. He said that he's noticed that a lot of PS4 and Xbox players show a lot of respect for Breath of the Wild, and I agree. I think that Breath of the Wild really attracted a lot of attention outside of your typical Nintendo fans, and people who know at least a little bit about Breath of the Wild have seen the reviews, have heard about how good it is, and it's one of those things where like it's kind of like even if you hate Nintendo or something, you're like, oh yeah, well it's like a universally accepted that this game is really good, and if you say it's bad or you say it's just for kids, most people are going to think you're an idiot, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things where Breath of the Wild, it tapped into a larger audience. And I think that's actually really interesting, right? So we're getting into an interesting topic now. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Breath of the Wild is going to be the best-selling Zelda game of all time, right? Why? Why is it going to be the best-selling Zelda game of all time? A few different reasons. One, Nintendo has marketed it pretty well, and they've also marketed the Switch pretty well, and it was like the big Switch game at launch. But there's another reason. Nintendo changed around the structure for Zelda. They looked at its fundamentals and they tried to keep the core essence of Zelda, but they tried to expand upon it, improve upon it, and make it new, right? But by doing that, they also managed to do something else. They managed to create a game that appeals to a much larger audience, right? So they really went full-on open world. You know, they created a style that is very inviting to all different kinds of viewers. They didn't do the game doesn't alienate many players. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. When you play the game, the way it's designed is incredibly intelligent because they know what what people look at, like they're taking advantage of like that natural curiosity that every human being has. If you notice how the color palette of the game, right, and you look at when you first start the game and you see all these shrines out there, they're orange. It's that color that really stands out to you. You're like, oh, what is that? I have to go over there. And then you're like, oh, I have to go over there. Oh, I have to go over there. It's that formula that is ingenious about Breath of the Wild that has really allowed it to appeal to a very, very large audience. And then, of course, Nintendo executed it extremely well. It's probably one of the most polished open world games to ever come out, and with and not really need too many patches in terms of overall polish. Of course, they fixed the frame rate a few times over the months, but overall, the game has appealed to a very, very large audience, and I don't think any of us realized that at first.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting game because although it's kind of got a cartoony style, it's not a very, I don't know. It's an interesting game because it appeals to everyone in a sense, even down to the mechanics, down to the story, down to the art style. Like every element of this game appeals to such a wide audience because it's not an M-rated game, so it appeals to a lot of children, even though there's a lot of children who play M-rated games, but I'm just saying that's what the market is. And it's got a style that's kind of in between a very cartoony, lighthearted kind of Mario style and more of a kind of darker, kind of more mature, like Skyrim-ish style. It's very in the between those kind of styles, while also being just a stunningly beautiful game, and just how much content there is. When people look at games, like a big thing is just how much content is there, how long am I going to play this, and that's just a thing that everybody enjoys seeing, is a game that's full of content, a game that's really big, a game you're going to really get your money's worth for, and that's just a big thing that also makes it accessible for everyone. And just how much marketing is, like, you see the Switch, you see Zelda. Like, that's pretty much just it's almost a guarantee. You see something about the Switch in, like, a store or something, you're probably going to see Zelda along with it as well. Less so than it was, of course, back when the game released, but still.
Yeah. Everyone knows about Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, everyone knows about it.
It was a moment. When the game came out, it was a moment in history. Even occasionally now, if I ever hear people talking about a Switch and they ask me about it for whatever reason, a lot of times Zelda comes up. I don't bring it up. People ask me about, have you played Zelda yet? I'm like, yeah, I played Zelda. It was a moment in history. and it was the torchbearer for the Switch and a new Nintendo that is appealing to a larger core gaming audience, right? Which is an audience that's going to enjoy things like Doom, like Grand Theft Auto, like Skyrim, like, you know, like all sorts of games like that. So we're going to see games like that in the future. We're going to see FIFA, we're going to see NBA 2Ks, we're going to see the Maddens, we're going to see, hey, maybe, I don't know, what's a game that just normally come out on the Switch? I mean, we're getting Rocket League, that's not something that came out on Wii U. It could have, it didn't, you know, so lots of games are coming, and I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in year 2. It's going to be special. So there's another thing I want to talk about before we move on to our final topic, right? And that is that apparently, based off Japanese sales of the Super Nintendo, it seems pretty clear that there is a lot more Super NES Classic Edition stock compared to the NES Classic Edition. Nintendo's provided a lot more stock. And yet, despite that, it's just selling really, really well and still not that easy to find. I haven't been looking last week or so, so maybe, you know, I might have been able to get it, but I just haven't gone around to going out and looking again. But it's been selling well. Nintendo has, they said they're going to bring out more stock, and they have. So that's a good sign. Brandon, you know any more about this?
Yeah, I actually know the exact sales numbers. So
Okay.
This is for the first 4 days of sales. So the NES Classic in its first 4 days in Japan sold 260,000 units. But the SNES Classic actually sold 370,000. So they got the stock up 110,000 units, which is roughly a third or 30% more stock, which is really good in my opinion. Like 30% more stock is pretty dang good, and that's in Japan alone. So we don't know. We don't know America or
it's
Europe
probably
yet.
similar though.
Could be.
Probably. I mean, that similar could go as far as additional 50% in North America, right, or just 20% in America. I don't know, but from my impressions is that it has been easier to get. The whole scalper situation is way less significant, way less bad. But I mean, it's still kind of hard to get. I mean, that's just a fact. But that doesn't mean that's not, you know. Sometimes when something's really popular, sometimes not everyone can get it immediately. So we'll see how things turn out by the end of the year. You know, the rest of October, come November, Black Friday, Christmas, you know, the entire holiday season. Once the entire holiday season is said and done, let's see how many people have gotten a Classic Edition that have wanted one, and how many people haven't gotten it, they're still trying to get it. Then we'll decide if Nintendo really, you know, fix the situation. You know, give them at least a couple months to sort of bring it all out there. We'll see. I'm hopeful. Hopefully I will have them before the end of the year. I think I will. I'll probably have them before the end of the month. We'll see what happens. So, any closing thoughts on that topic, Brandon? Also, what's up, John?
I think at face value, 30% more on day one doesn't seem as big of a deal as it could, but I think once we start seeing how much it sells next month, how much the follow-up shipments are for the SNES Classic, I think that's how we're going to know just how much more stock is being sent, because the NES Classic, it sold 260,000 on launch day. It only sold about that same amount again throughout the whole year. It ended up selling 560,000 by the end of the year, which is a little over twice as much as it sold in its first week. Just not good. That supply drain, it just stopped pretty much right after the first week, and it just slowly crawled. If you're getting, the same amount of sales in like 3 months as you are in 1 week, that's not good. You're not keeping supply up. I think it's gonna be interesting when we see what the next shipment is, where we see next month's numbers. That's when it's gonna be interesting to see if they continue the stock, which I think, from what we're already seeing, actually, and I've heard, I don't know about this for sure, but I've heard several reports of people seeing new shipments already coming for the SNES Classic in America. So I don't know how many, but they're saying a pretty substantial amount. I haven't actually checked my local area, but apparently there's been lots of reports of people seeing SNES is actually available to buy in their local stores. So it's going to be interesting to see next month's numbers, to see America and Europe's numbers, and I think it's going to be interesting because we have to get a worldwide perspective on how much it's sold. We can't just look at one country in 1 week and get the numbers. But still, a 30% increase is better than nothing. It's pretty substantial. Actually sold more in its first week than the Switch. They actually supplied more than the Nintendo Switch.
That's interesting. It is. It really is. But I think what's most important is getting Switches out there, and the reports of 2 million a month coming. I think that's gonna be really good. I think it's gonna go a long ways towards getting a lot of Switches out there by the end of the year. And there's going to be a game that everyone's going to be talking about, and that is Super Mario Odyssey. So, as the topic of this entire discussion suggests, we're going to be talking about how good Super Mario Odyssey just might be. And Tatsumi Kimishima, you asked us earlier, how do we think it's going to compare to Breath of the Wild? Which one could be Game of the Year? I mean, obviously we haven't seen all the reviews, we haven't gotten our hands on the game ourselves, we haven't played it to we haven't played it at all, right? I mean, I've put in 240 hours into Breath of the Wild, right? So I know that game pretty well. But based off what we have seen, what we do know, how good I think Mario Odyssey is going to be. Well, not 100% sure yet, but based off what I'm hearing from that Edge review that came out that's giving the game a perfect 10, I'm pretty excited. So let's go over some of the bullets here. Okay, so they're just so spoiler. There's gonna be some details here. Nothing that I think is major. I think it's worth for everyone to hear. But I'm just putting it out there. If you want it to be in an entire media blackout, well then you probably shouldn't have even clicked on this video. But regardless, let me go over some of the bullets here. So this is some stuff that's being said from the Edge review. There are 50 odd capture possibilities. It pays close attention to the physics and handling of each new form, making each one enjoyable to command. So from that alone, right, they're basically saying that this game is like going to have about 50 different characters that you can transform to. It's basically like almost 50 playable characters, and apparently they've paid really close attention to the physics and the way they handle. So it's not just like, you know, like, for example, that Mario 64 mod, which was obviously not polished or optimized in any way, where you could just throw your hat and change into something, right? This is like super polished, and when you're going to do this, it's going to feel like its own character, and it's going to feel different, and that's really cool. So that just shows how much polish you're putting into this game. What do you think about that, Brandon?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would liken... I think this is the closest... The capture mechanic is the closest thing we have to the normal Mario power-ups. And typically, in a Mario game, there are... How many do you think? Maybe like... I'm trying to think. Maybe 8 to 10? I'm trying to think how many are normal games.
I think several is an ideal phrase. And several, in my mind, is somewhere between a handful and a dozen. So around 7.
Yeah, so... you know, yeah, 7 to maybe 10
in an
average
2.
Mario game.
Yeah.
And we're getting what is essentially 50 power-ups. But I think this even goes farther than a lot of the power-ups go in most Mario games. I mean, you're controlling a whole other like creature in the world. You have so many abilities that you don't have as normal Mario. Every time you capture something, it feels completely different. You can do new things, explore new areas, and it's just so much more than just a generic power-up. And yet there are so many more possibilities than there were back, you know, when it was just normal power-ups. Like, it's insane to think about. These are more evolved than power-ups, and yet there are so many more of them. It just seems to add a whole new layer to the Mario. And this makes it, or the Mario formula, it makes it feel super fresh, and kind of like that same kind of feeling like you got when you played Mario Galaxy. You can tell this is different. This is not normal Mario. This is something very unique and special. I think that adds a whole new layer of that to the game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because these power-ups aren't even mandatory. They're just optional. So it just sounds like this game is giving you a multitude of options, kind of like Breath of the Wild. So you're going to be able to explore the world and handle it in a lot of different ways. And it just sounds like, we're going to continue down the bullets here, but it really sounds like Nintendo is focusing on a similar sort of idea, like the similar concepts to the way they made Breath of the Wild so good. And by good, I mean appealing to a large audience. Because they're constructing the worlds and the transformations and the gameplay in a way that appeals to a lot of different people, because everyone can play the game in a completely different way. And that's what's really cool about this. So let's just move forward with a few more bullets here. Like, you don't have to use Cappy at all to beat the game, apparently. Like, you can beat almost everything without using Cappy. So you can play as a normal Mario, and apparently Mario himself has a lot more options than other Mario games. On top of these multitude of power-ups by using Cappy and transforming into all these different characters. So there's all these different things you can do and mix things up, and it's just there's a lot of variety here. So it all sounds like it's super, super polished and well put together. There's just so much going on here, and just the idea that you can play the game once in a completely different way from your second, third, or fourth playthrough. I just kind of like Breath of the Wild. I think this is gonna give Breath of the Wild a run for its money. Just from that alone, just seeing what they're describing here, it really does sound like they're taking what they learned from Breath of the Wild and really creating a game that appeals to a very large audience. And Mario already appeals to a very large audience, which is interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. It's going to appeal to many more people. Although Mario is kind of the game that just appeals to everyone anyways.
Yeah.
But this is going to appeal to even more people who just see these crazy stuff happening. They're just like, whoa, that's crazy. I wonder what else can happen. I wonder what else you can do in this game with all these crazy things you can do. That just feels unique to any other game. I mean, there's pretty much no other game like it. And as you said, I forget what we were talking about before. You said curiosity sells things, and I think that's going to be a big sell for this game as well. Even on top of the fact that it's going to be an awesome 3D Mario game.
So Kimishimi asked us a question if how many moons are there in the game, right? Like stars, but in this game it's moons. So there's a bullet here from the Edge review that says Link may have more Korok seeds, but there are 900 in Breath of the Wild, to find that Mario has moons, but not by many. So I don't know exactly how many that is, but let's say it's just 60% or 66, about 2/3 of that. The idea of having 600 moons in Mario Odyssey, that's a lot. That's it. We don't know how much, but it's at least going to be. I think it's a fair prediction to say it's going to be at least 1,000. Maybe more, maybe a lot more. I don't know exactly. Have hard numbers come out for that, Brandon? Have you seen anything that gives us a better idea of how many moons there are in the game?
Not that I know of, although I haven't been exactly searching out Mario Odyssey.
Right. Actually, let's see what a quick Google search gives us. How many power moons are in Super Mario Odyssey? Let's see. My prediction is... Okay, so unlike... I don't know, okay, I can't see anything very quickly. Well, okay, I am seeing that there seems to be at least 600. So, okay, so at least 600, and there may be more than that. So we could be looking at something around 700-800. But they said it's not as many Korok seeds as there are power moons, right? So there's a 900 Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild. So less than 900, but more than 600. So somewhere between 600 and 900 power moons, which is a lot. That is a lot.
That's a lot.
And from what I've seen of Mario Odyssey, collecting one power moon, in most cases, is a lot more interesting than collecting one Korok seed in Breath of the Wild.
Oh yeah, way more.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And I've also heard interesting things about the post game. Apparently, Peach is going to have a significant part of the post game, but not in the way you think. I don't know what that means. It's very vague, but there is a post game here, and it sounds like the post game is really good. And I love the post game for Mario Galaxy, even 3D World. So we'll see how they handle post game Mario Odyssey, but it sounds very, very promising. There's just a lot of interesting things that are being said so far about Mario Odyssey. Now, do I actually think it could be better than Breath of the Wild? That's a tough question. It's a very tough question. Because Breath of the Wild is one of the best games we've done in a very long time. In terms of overall critical acclaim, in terms of sales, it is up there. And I don't think there's any game that has come out this year so far that even comes close to giving Breath of the Wild any sort of competition when it comes to Game of the Year. However, Mario Odyssey may be the game that gives Zelda the competition it deserves. Like, it actually may rival it. Will it? I don't know. We're going to have to see more reviews. We're going to have to play the game ourselves. Yeah. I would say that Breath of the Wild is probably going to edge it out. I think it will.
I would suspect.
I think Breath of the Wild is going to edge out Mario Odyssey. And if it doesn't, I feel like Mario Odyssey may... If Mario Odyssey gets more Game of the Year awards than Breath of the Wild, I think part of that may have more to do with the fact that Mario Odyssey is more recent. And I've always kind of felt that way. I don't know how true that is. That's just my own opinion. Tell me if I'm wrong. If you guys have a better idea, let me know. But whenever I see Game of the Year award shows, I always feel like it's the game that comes out towards the end of the year and not earlier part of the year in most cases, unless there's really nothing that even comes even close, right, to the game that came out earlier in the year. It's just like, because a newer game is more recent in someone's mind.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. That's just the impression I get a lot of the time.
I feel like that would be the case just because you're in that kind of honeymoon phase of the game. Where in the other game, you're like, I've played that, I've had so much time to reminisce on it, and you're kind of thinking, you know, when you played a game for so long, the idea of going back to it is not as much as a newer game. So you're kind of, in that way, your mind just prioritizes the newer game, because you haven't played it as much. So you're just instinctively going to go, I don't really want to play that game again, but I really want to play this new game again. And your mind kind of equates that to, this is a better game than this one is, even though that may not be how you actually feel. And that influences a lot of decisions, I feel.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how... I really don't know how that'll work in terms of like different like websites and publications for the Game of the Year like awards given. But in terms of overall perception, like in terms, you know, like Twitter debates and such, I do feel like there's going to be some people that are going to be like, oh, Mario Odyssey is way better than Breath of the Wild, right? Just because it's more fresh to them. They may feel that way. But will it actually be better? I'm not really sure. But let's go over a few more bullets that we got from that, snippets we got from the Edge review, okay? So here's one. Like, they even say, there is a lot of Breath of the Wild in Super Mario Odyssey, from the chance to scout out potential destinations from high above ground, to the way the soundtrack often lets you acclimate to your surroundings in a relative quiet way before the stage of theme announces itself. But it's most obvious in the way its environments appeal to your natural curiosity, sights and sounds teasing you away from your present path, and in a sheer volume of diversions. So like I was saying earlier, it really just seemed that they're carrying a lot of the similar concepts from Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. And that doesn't mean the games are the same in any way, no, but just like that intelligence of game design in terms of understanding what people want, appealing to that adventurous curiosity that everyone has, that's what Mario Odyssey is doing really, really well, right? And it has a scope, it has that incredible design, that polish that we expect from Nintendo games, the same way Breath of the Wild is, except Breath of the Wild has a large scope. Mario Odyssey is a bit more confined, right? It's still open world, but it's confined. And they've had a little bit more time to work things on. So I think Mario Odyssey, I mean, you know, it's one of those things where, to me, I think I'm going to end up playing it, I'm going to love it, and I'm going to love Breath of the Wild, and I'm not going to really be able to tell you which game I think is better. I'm going to like both games, you know? It's kind of like this. I love tacos, but I also love cheeseburgers. I don't necessarily like one more over the other. It just kind of like depends on the day of the week, you know? So I don't know what... I would say, if I had to bet, I'm going to say that Breath of the Wild is going to get more Game of the Year awards than Super Mario Odyssey. But there's going to be some publications that will pick Odyssey. It's going to be close. Both games are going to go down some of the best, like, year one, like, games ever. It's going to be... They're probably both going to go down as one of the best Nintendo games ever. I have a really good feeling about Mario Odyssey. It's going to be amazing. I'm super excited about it. But see, I have Metroid music playing in the background. I don't know if you guys can hear it. So it's making me think about Metroid right now. And I have a big video planned at the end of the week about Metroid Prime. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is what to expect from the Metroid series, right? We're talking about Breath of the Wild, we're talking about Mario Odyssey, and how a lot of their design elements are very similar in the sense of how it appeals to that natural curiosity that people have, right? I think they're going to carry that same sort of idea into Metroid. Does that mean it's going to be this super large open world? Not necessarily, right? That concept can be used in many different ways, but it's really exciting to think that they could be taking Metroid to a whole other level. The same way they're doing for Metroid, I mean, not for Metroid, for Zelda and Mario. So it's just, I'm really excited about what Nintendo's doing here. They're just firing on all cylinders. They've even, like, improved, like, the way they create games, and that's kind of crazy. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, as far as... I'd like to touch back on...
We'll come back to Metroid.
Mario Odyssey versus Zelda, I think, is weird, because when you rate a game, there's all kinds of different things that can go into that rating. For example, I would probably give Zelda Breath of the Wild an 8.5 to 9. I know a lot of people are giving it 10 out of 10s, but I just don't think it deserves that. And there's a lot of things to go into that. There's the technical side. There's the things I thought were going to be a bigger influence in the game that weren't, like story. I thought that was going to be a bigger aspect of the game. That's what it was kind of looking like. There was a lot of mystery of the story, and then they kind of just like explained it very quickly. And it wasn't that big of a deal, which wasn't bad. It was just not what I was expecting. So I'd probably give it an 8.5 out of 9. But it's hard you can't just rate a game off of that alone, as far as which game is better than another game. You can't go, this game is an 8.5 and this game has an 8.6. This game is obviously better than this game. Like, that's just not always the case. But I feel like it's gonna be very controversial. But I think what might put some people over the edge is that I think Mario Odyssey will be a technically better game than Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild still has some problems with frame rate, and there's some minor glitches and stuff like that. And I think Mario Odyssey, being a smaller, more confined world, even though it's still going to be huge, I think it's going to have a lot less problems. I think the frame rate's going to be pretty much rock solid. I don't think there's going to be any bugs or anything like that. I think on the technical side of things, it will be better, which may put people over the edge because they can't choose
I would
as
prefer
far as
the
game
term.
itself.
I would prefer the term polished, not better. But I agree with you. I think the game is going to be more polished. Now, I mean, it's like I said, Breath of the Wild is a large game. When you compare it to open world games of that scale, it's very polished.
It's really good.
If you compare it to like the way how polished or lack of polish Skyrim had when it came out, then that's a good example. Or even Witcher.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild has a lot of polish for the game, for that kind of game. But compared to Mario Odyssey, and it's gonna have. I mean, most Mario games have tons of polish, right? So I expect that to continue here with Mario Odyssey. We're already hearing about 900p 60 FPS locked the entire time, docked, and in handheld 720p 60 FPS, which is crazy. That all the time, 100% of the time. So
it's insane for an open world game.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. So there's something else that's interesting that they were talking about for Mario Odyssey, and is that apparently they prefer playing the game in docked mode as opposed to handheld mode. Like, they just kind of felt like the game was designed as a home console game. I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, all right. I mean, I preferred to play Zelda in docked mode, right, at home, but I still enjoyed playing it on the go as well. It didn't feel like a worse experience by any stretch. But they're saying that the experience just seems more suited for a home console experience. That's someone else's opinion, right? But they even said that they liked using the Joy-Cons, like with the little straps on with the motion controls. So that's interesting. I didn't know. I'm not sure if I'll play that way. I think I'll at least give it a shot. But I'm not surprised that the game is polished and it feels really good. That it feels like you're like a legitimate 3D Mario game that's fluid with all these different interactions and jumps and somersaults that you can do with really, really tight, refined controls. Like, that's super exciting to me. I love super smooth, super refined platformers. They're talking about a post-game, which is one of my favorite parts about Mario games, where it gets really hard and challenging, trying to get every single moon to unlock that special thing at the end of the game. I'm really excited about that. Like, tons. Like, I mean, how do you feel about what you've seen so far about the controls, Brandon?
Yeah, well, and it's hard to get it off of footage, but from what I've heard of people who have played the game, there are demos that I could go to, but I'm kind of just holding off until the game comes out.
Yeah, I mean, I can hold on. It's coming out for my birthday in 2 weeks, so.
Yeah, it's coming out in
my
so
birthday's
soon.
the 29th, the game comes out the 27th, so,
well,
you know.
Yeah, but from what I've heard of people who have played the game, the controls are supposed to be amazing, like, just so good. Just it feels one-to-one. It's almost like Mario is just I don't know. I've heard the phrase an extension of yourself or something like that. I guess that's the best way people have found to put it. But even the motion controls they found are pretty one-to-one. Like, your movements to how the cap is moving and stuff. It's supposed to be really, really good and feel amazing. So I'm gonna definitely try that out. I've liked motion controls in different games. Believe it or not, I actually liked motion controls in Skyward Sword. I know I'm a horrible person or something, apparently, to the majority of the internet. But I actually liked the motion controls in Skyward Sword. They were good. I don't know if it was my setup was better than other people's, but I liked them.
I liked it.
They worked well.
I liked it as well. I think it comes down to playstyle, but we'll save that debate for another time. But it's interesting, though, you talk about how, you know, this feels like an ideal Mario game, right? So I remember when I was playing Breath of the Wild, there were many times when I was playing Breath of the Wild, and I was like, wow, this is the Zelda game that I always have dreamed of, right? Not the entire time. I'm gonna say that, okay? But there were many times where I felt that way, and I've never felt that way about a Zelda game since I was a kid, right? But with Mario Odyssey, I get the sense that I'm gonna be playing this game, and the entire time I'm gonna be thinking, this is the Mario game that I have always dreamed of, you know? Like, you know, when we were kids and we were kind of waiting for that next big, next-gen Nintendo system, right? We were just hoping they would show off a new Mario game that would just blow our minds. I think that's what this game is going to be, you know? But it's going to be perfect. It's going to be perfect camera, perfect polish, tons of gameplay, tons of variety, and I have the sense that when I play this game, it's just going to have that magic feel to it, and I'm going to be like, this is the Mario game I've always dreamed of. So I think it's actually going to do that better than Zelda. That doesn't mean I think it's going to be a better game, because I guess I just like Zelda more. I don't know, it's really hard to say. I haven't played the game yet, but the impression I get is that this is going to be like the ideal Mario game. So, we'll see. We will see. I guess the thing is I just see a lot of room for growth for Zelda, right?
Yeah, me too.
And I think Nintendo's closer to mastering the Mario formula than they are to mastering the Zelda formula.
It's
but
interesting
they're
because
getting there, though. They're getting there.
Yeah, because when I play Zelda Breath of the Wild, I still have like a want to go back and play like Skyward Sword and different like Wind Waker. I still like those games. They have something that is unique, and they all have different play styles and something that they do better than Breath of the Wild. I feel like if we play Mario Odyssey, we're gonna be like, it's almost gonna make the other games like almost irrelevant, other than maybe Galaxy, because Galaxy's just its own kind of thing. But as far as going back and playing Mario 64 and playing Mario Sunshine, we're gonna be like, Mario Odyssey is going to be the better experience. It's going to be a much more similar experience, and I think it's going to overshadow those experiences and kind of make you feel like, why would you go back and play those other than just for like nostalgia or something? Where in Zelda is, I would actually want to go back and play those because there's something they do better. The dungeons, I feel like, are much better in some of the other Zelda games than they are in Breath of the Wild. The story is better in some of the other Zelda games than in Breath of the Wild. And yet, Mario, it's so much that I don't know if I'm going to want to play Mario Odyssey and then play another Mario game.
Well, I mean, I think there's always a reason to go back to different Mario games because they all are unique. But I see what you're saying, and I agree to an extent. I think that, you know, with Mario, there's just going to be these situations where it just feels like they kind of get the best of every Mario game in Odyssey. That from what we're seeing so far, like they have the sections that you kind of first discovered in Sunshine, where they take off your, take away your FLUDD, so you're just moving around as Mario. They have those sections, right, which are also like Galaxies. You have your Galaxy stuff, which are also kind of embedded into the overworld as well. But it gives you that sandbox feel that you got from Mario 64 and Sunshine, but also that refined level design that we got in 3D World and Galaxy, and then kind of all making it all better. And they're even saying that the bosses in this game are some of the best in any Mario game, which I think is a really big thing to say if you're comparing it to the Galaxy games, because the Galaxy games had some of the best bosses ever. Right now, I don't know if they're just really bad with their memory here, and they just remember the 3D World bosses, because those were bad, right? Not bad, just not amazing like the Galaxy ones. So we'll see. This is someone else's opinion. We don't know. This is one opinion. But I do agree with you, Brent. I do think that this Mario game is going to be the 3D Mario game of Mario games. It's going to connect everything we've loved about previous 3D Mario games into one. It's even going to have a lot of 2D Mario game elements that are going to make it exciting as well. And it's going to feel like something new all at the same time, all appealing to lots of kinds of people. It's going to have a bit of that Breath of the Wild feel in terms of bringing you back to feeling like a kid, encouraging that sense of curiosity and exploration, and that is super, super exciting. So, do you have anything to add to this before I sort of, I guess, jump to our extracurricular topic that I didn't plan?
I guess just about a small thing, but just for the actual level design, I've seen like behind the scenes stuff about how they make it to where to actually bring your curiosity in, and you can see exactly like how they position the world. And when you look at the world, you feel like it's a natural world. It's kind of got a bit of randomness to it. But when you actually go into the level design, you see that there's not much randomness at all. Everything is designed to block other things, and there's mountains in the way of some kind of big special thing behind them.
When you say there's not much randomness, what you really mean is like everything is placed in a way that feels and looks natural, but also was placed with intent to create a better designed world.
Yes.
Right.
Everything has a
very
purpose,
intelligent
design purpose, which is really cool. So I'd recommend going and checking out, if you guys haven't already, sometime after this podcast, I recommend going and checking out behind the scenes stuff about just how the developers, made all this stuff that really feeds into your curiosity. It's really just an interesting thing that I thought was really, really cool. So you guys should check that out sometime.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say that.
So I want to talk more about this concept of appealing to that natural curiosity that everyone has, right? Because they did with Breath of the Wild, which is one of the reasons why Breath of the Wild is so good, right? And it seems like they're doing it with Mario Odyssey. And I brought up the idea of them taking the conventions that they've sort of like, a lot of the concepts that they used to create Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey and bring that into Metroid Prime. I don't want to touch on it entirely because I have a video about it coming out later the week, and we can talk more about it in the podcast in the future. But just what exactly did Nintendo do? Like they've upped it to another. They've taken it to another level. Like their design philosophy. They've taken it. It's different now. It seems like Breath of the Wild was not something that we thought Nintendo could do anymore. And Mario Odyssey, it's just like it is the ideal Mario game. Like we know Nintendo's good at creating polished games, but this has large scope. This has variety. Like, it's kind of surprising me about what we're hearing about how much content is going to be in this game. What is it about Nintendo? Like, they've gotten better. I actually feel that way. Nintendo has gotten better. It's not like Nintendo's returned to their old ways. They've become better than that. What do you think, Brandon?
I definitely agree. There's a lot of design elements that they've done better. A lot of things just to make things more interesting and make you want to explore even more. Than in previous Nintendo games. There's just so much design intelligence. It's like, it blows your mind when you look at the kind of stuff they think about. You're like, I didn't even think about when I was playing that game. It just felt so natural. It just felt so like that's how it should be. And yet it was all like, there's such a design element in there that you wouldn't notice. It's perfect because you don't notice it. That's the thing. Of the other Nintendo games, they had good design, but you kind of notice, like, this is supposed to be here, and this is here for this. And in their newer games, it's like, you don't notice that is design, which I think is the point. You get more immersed if you don't notice that the thing you're playing is designed. You just feel like it's natural. It's supposed to be there. Like it wasn't placed there. Because a lot of games, you feel like it feels good, but you notice that, that's obviously put here for such and such reason to make this more curious or something like that. This is more natural. It flows better. You don't notice while you're playing. You just kind of explore naturally.
Yeah, so it looks like Nintendo must have a magic hat or something. I just think, they actually, some of the people that they have there after years and years of designing games, they've mastered game design. And we've always thought that they were exceptional. They've always been considered the best, but what they did with Breath of the Wild, and it seems like they may be doing it with Mario Odyssey. It's incredibly exciting, and I don't know which game is gonna be the game of the year. I don't know for sure, but I mean,
it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough.
That's another thing, right? We've never really had a mainline Zelda game and a mainline Mario game come out the same year and compete each other for game of the year. So that's going to be an amazing thing to see. Just the fact that they're going to be competing against each other, that's not something us Nintendo fans have been able to enjoy. And we're going to get to enjoy it this year. So I'm excited about it, guys. I guess that's it for tonight's discussion. Is there anything else that anyone wants to say? Brian, is there anything else you want to add before we, I guess, call it a night?
I don't really have anything, but interesting, just quick question real quick. Sure. Because I think I meant to bring it up more, but we didn't.
Yeah.
Telltale Games, they've already brought Minecraft Story Mode. They're bringing Batman and Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're supposed to be bringing more Minecraft and more other games. So I was just interested, have you played a Telltale game or watched a Telltale game, and which one?
Me? I mean, I guess I haven't really played too many. I mean, I played a little bit of Minecraft. It's cool, but I don't want to get myself sucked into it. I've been getting myself sucked into Stardew Valley. It's scary. I'm terrified of it. It's I need to keep away from that game. I've been playing a lot of it, but no, I haven't really played too many Telltale games, to be honest.
Yeah. Personally, I've never played one, but I have watched. Because they're typically more movie-like, so I just kind of like to watch them. Plus some cheap, and just like there's other games I'm gonna pay for. So, I've watched Batman Season 1, and I've watched a little bit of Season 2. Probably gonna actually try to Let's Play that, because people keep asking me. But then I've watched Tales of the Borderlands, which is really good. But yeah, so a lot of Telltale support. That's already 3 games that we know of, 3 games that we know of. They want to put a lot more on there, so big support from them.
Yeah. Tossme is asking, do we think is there any Xbox or PS4 games that can compete with Odyssey or Breath of the Wild this year? And I'm gonna be straight up, and I'm not being biased here. No.
There just isn't.
Like, I think the closest game will be Horizon Zero Dawn, and we saw how Horizon Zero Dawn compared to Breath of the Wild. Yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn is a good game. Don't get me wrong. There are some great games on those systems. But Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild this year is just Nintendo's year. It just is.
It is. Yeah.
You know, Nintendo's gonna be hard pressed to create 2 better games. I think. Maybe they'll do it. Maybe they'll create other games that are close, but I don't think it is. I don't think this is really. This is Nintendo's year. I mean, it's just that simple. This is Nintendo's year. Of course, we don't know how good Mario Odyssey actually is, right? But it has all the signs of it being close to Breath of the Wild level in terms of overall critical acclaim.
Yeah.
So assuming it's close to Breath of the Wild level, no, I don't think there's anything else. I really don't. In fact, Xenoblade, I think Xenoblade's not going to be close either. I think this Xenoblade might be considered a little bit better than Xenoblade X, which is great. You know, this Xenoblade might be close to Horizon Zero Dawn level, but that is not Breath of the Wild or perhaps even Mario Odyssey level. You know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Breath of the Wild is like top 10 of all time sort of game. You know.
Yeah.
I don't expect any other game to come that. There's no reason to think that right now. There really isn't. It's just Nintendo's year. Which, for us Nintendo fans, is great, you know? I would love to see Metroid get close to this. Will it, though? I don't know. I guess we'll talk about that next week. So, I guess I'm calling it a night, unless there's anything else that you want to say, Brandon. I think we've reached our natural conclusion for this night.
Yeah, I do want to disagree on you about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 maybe not being on the levels of Zelda or Mario.
Okay, well, for whatever reason, your opinion of Breath of the Wild is lesser than most.
That's true.
Like I said, I think Xenoblade 2. I said it's probably gonna be around Horizon Zero Dawn level, which is really good. If it was in any other year, it would be a Game of the Year contender. But coming out the same year as Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, you know, it's gonna be under those games in terms of critical acclaim. Like it's gonna be.
For critical acclaim, the game is not gonna do nearly as well as it should. There's just no way the game's not gonna do anywhere near what it should. But I don't know. The original Xenoblade Chronicles is one of my favorite games of all time. It's top 5 easy. So this one, I think, has the potential to be really, really good. So I just don't. I'm not saying it will be. I'm just saying there is a potential there.
Yeah. My cat is trying to end the podcast. She keeps on trying to jump on the computer. I'm like petting her off. Like, no, don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't.
All right. So, thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. If you have any advice, suggestions, or questions that we could answer next week, put them in the comments below, or hit us up on Discord, or check us out on Patreon. So, yeah, that's it, guys. Have a great night, a beautiful week, and bye.
Bye.